Hey, Roberto here. My guest for this episode is presentation and speaking coach Doris Pickering. We talk about self-confidence, facing our fears, public speaking, transitioning from employee to entrepreneur, and executive presence for career advancement. Let's do this. Welcome to another episode. I'm your host, Roberto Hernandez, and this is the Morning Tempo Podcast, and I'm very excited to say that for the first time. There will continue to be conversations with business owners and the entrepreneurial with a slant toward creativity. If you are interested in learning what I'm learning from other business owners and entrepreneurs that I speak and work with, including those you hear on this podcast, join the Now Morning Tempo community. If you'd like to receive these tidbits of wisdom in an occasional email from me, just go to morningtempo.com to join. I'll also let you know about the latest episodes of this podcast. Plus, I'll share articles, apps, books, and anything I come across that could help you in your creative entrepreneurial endeavors. And it's free. Doris is one of my favorite people in the San Francisco Bay Area. We are acquainted by way of a referral marketing community you may have heard me talk about in prior episodes of this podcast. Our discussion touches on the evolution of her business and her personal mindset, both of which I believe may resonate with you. She is a gifted observer of life, and through desire, commitment, trial and error, and practice, she's becoming a more and more sought-after coach trainer for public speaking, presentation, with a focus on executive presence. But she doesn't just work with company executives as executive presence might imply, and as you'll hear in the following conversation. Effective presentation and speaking are things that create enormous stress for many people. With a lack of these skills, one can hinder themselves in business and the workplace, and in life, I might add. We talk a good deal about this and much more. Here's me and my friend, Doris Pickering. I'm ready to roll. Are you ready?
I am ready.
Are you sure?
I am born ready.
I know you are. That's how I know you, Doris. Thank you for spending a little bit of time on your Friday, this 1st of November, 2019 with me.
Happy November.
I told my wife, Sammy, today about, I said, I got to be home an hour before my interview. I got some, got to do a little homework and whatnot. And I said, I'm about to talk to one of my favorite people in the Bay Area. And she said, who's that? And I said, Doris Pickering.
Thank you. No, you remain one of mine no matter where you are in the world.
I bet you say that to all the boys who tell you that you're one of their favorites. All right.
My favorite Panama.
Yeah, I'm your favorite boy in Panama. That's good enough. So, Doris, to give my listeners a little bit about you, can you please tell me and the listeners about your corporate career with LSI Logic, Philips Semiconductor, and HP, and how and why you got into coaching and consulting in the public speaking arena?
Oh, yes. No, I actually loved my corporate career. I had many different roles in many different companies, like you just mentioned, all the way from managing and planning fabs where they make silicon wafers to managing the supplier relationship when we would send the chips overseas and put into packages. So I got to travel all over the world and visit a lot of these really highly technical companies doing really cool things, and also was part of logistics, planning, operations, sales operations. And I went to HP was my last career stop. I was there for 13 years, loved that company, and managed their photo printer line and their all-in-one line. Then I went into sales operations, and I had accounts such as Costco, Sears, Radio Shack, and for people here in the Bay Area, Fry's, and really loved that. And then that was on the IPG side, which is their printer and ink division. Then I moved over to the personal computer division and got to learn how they managed all the computer sales. And I managed their accessory line, so the mice, keyboards, and really enjoyed that position. And then I decided when they had an offer to have a package to leave, I'd been there for 13 years and thought, well, that is a good run and maybe it's time to do something different. And I decided that I'm just probably going to go to Apple or Google like everybody does. But I realized that in that interim, my heart just wasn't into being an employee anymore, which in a way shook up my self-confidence and my vision of who am I? What am I going to do if I don't be an employee somewhere? But then I decided to start my own speaking training business because in all of those positions, in any company that I was at, you always give presentations. And I gave a lot of executive presentations and started watching where some people would get told by their manager, I want you to give a presentation on this. And they go, oh, no way. There's no way I'm going to do that. And I thought, first of all, going, oh, my God, you don't say no to your boss. That's a career limiting move, right? But also, the people that typically would say no to giving a presentation were the ones who, for one reason or another, were uncomfortable or shy or just couldn't do it. But they were usually either stagnant in their career or they were on the layoff list. Because when push comes to shove and say a recession hits or people need to lay off people and shed employee count, who are they going to keep? They typically keep the people who are great communicators. Because at the end of the day, you can have 10 people that are equally skilled. They're going to keep the people that are great communicators. And so that's what I decided to start my company based on, is making sure everybody could step into their own leadership potential, whether you're a small business owner or a vice president or a director at a whatever you're a part of, but be able to tap into your own leadership potential and be sure you're not on that layoff list.
That's great. And it really speaks to something that is, I want to say, near and dear to my heart, and that is like helping people in the workplace or in their career or life develop, become the best that they can be, so that when you're done with them, they can advance, they can survive in the environments that we might get subjected to in the corporate world or wherever. And you just kind of left them feeling like they're better at what they do or a better person somehow. That's really nice. Can you share a little bit about the self-confidence you mentioned? So you made a decision on your own to not start looking at a place. You sounded super confident. I'll just go to Google or Apple, like you were just going to do it, which I love. But in deciding to leave, you said it shook your self-confidence because you're not going to be an employee anymore. How does it work? How does life work? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Right. And it was really funny because I never, ever, ever even considered that I would not be an employee. I was just going to retire somewhere as an employee because I loved it. And once I left that certainty, I thought, well, what do I do with myself now? And I started feeling scared. And it's like your ground is moving behind you, because that was my identity. And I didn't realize how it had become my identity, not so much working for a company, like I have to work for HP or Apple or Google, but you're working for a company. Because when you're an employee, you get to kind of sort of create your own little fiefdom, and you have parameters and you know what you're going to do and you do a great job. But when you don't have that, well, then who are you? And what are you going to do with yourself? And so I remember just being filled with anxiety, not being able to be settled with that within my own self, is, well, if this isn't who I am, then who am I? But the gift that it gave me is I remember I started going to different conferences, and it was the first time that I ever really spent money on myself, because the nice thing about working for bigger companies is I got a lot of certificates. I was able to get my executive MBA fully paid for by HP. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So I seized every opportunity I could to keep my education going in all of these companies. But I never had to spend my own money because the companies were spending money and investing in me as an employee. Once I left, I started investing in me, which was a totally different experience for me. I started going to all these different conferences, and that's where I found out that there's all these different types of people that I had never been exposed to, like the holistic health healers and that type of personality. They're all searching for something, and I was searching for something. But in that searching, that's when it became very clear this is how I could move forward in something that I could do, and it was my own. So if I hadn't have decided to entertain the thought of not being an employee, I never would have had to go through that search to ultimately find out what my true passion is.
And when you decided to spend money on yourself the first time to go to one of these conferences, do you recall whether there was, I'm sure you do, but maybe it's more a question of do you recall the details? If there was a lot of conversation, inner voice conversation about, would imagine it may have been a significant, depending on what type of conference you went to, it may have been a significant chunk of cash for somebody who maybe wasn't getting a steady paycheck yet.
Definitely.
And so was there inner conversation you went through? Was there inner conversation you kind of went through that you had to talk yourself into it? Or did you just think, I have to do this?
Well, both. It's just like, I was struck by, I've got to do this. This will be really good for me. And this is the community I want to be in. It was a women's leadership conference, and it was $4,000, and I wasn't working. So again, it's just like gulp. But I felt called to do it. But I remember as I walked up and my hand was shaking writing that check, and I was the last person in line to do it because I kept kind of fidgeting going, what an idiot, you clown, you don't have this money. What are you going to do? What will my husband think? What will my family think? It's like all the self-doubt that I crack up because that's what I help my clients go through now, right? But I'm a normal human being. I was talking myself out of it as I was talking myself in it. And so at the end of the day, I handed over the check and I felt good, but it was still like, oh God, this better work out.
Do you remember the name of that conference, and is it still around?
It is still around. I'm drawing a blank on it, but the name of the lady who runs it, would you like her name?
Yeah, sure. Maybe we'll find it real quick while we're talking.
Yeah, is Wendy Walbridge, Walbridge, I believe. And it's some type of women's leadership thing.
Okay, I bet if anyone listening just Googles Wendy Walbridge leadership, they'll find that.
Yeah, she's here in the Bay Area. Fantastic for me. It was just really great. And then I went to another one, which kind of had an even more of a bigger impact, because that's where I got the lightning bolt of starting my own public speaking business. But Wendy Walbridge Group put me in this. It was a mind shift.
Mm-hmm.
That whole aurora and arena and environment of stepping forth into something bigger. That's where I got that feeling from. And then I went to another even bigger conference, and that's where, this is what I'm going to do. This is what I was meant to do. But being in those different conferences outside of the quote unquote being an employee mindset is where I truly felt like, I'm totally different now. I will never go back to work with somebody.
Is it safe to say that was a mind shift you didn't even know you needed?
Exactly. Didn't know I needed it at all.
I think that's a great story for people to hear.
It is. And that's where I, like when I'm working with my clients, it is a mind shift, but they don't know. They come to me for a specific reason, but they don't know they're going to get a mind shift. But it's just like me. I know it's time to do something different, don't know what it is, didn't know what I was stepping into, right? And that's the beauty of looking back.
That's good. I hope that specific story is one you share with your clients. You mentioned holistic professionals. We use that. And
correct.
I have actually a similar experience in that when I became exposed to a world of holistic professionals through Partner for Leads, which you and I know each other through,
mm-hmm.
I became very intrigued by them. I'm not sure why I bring it up. It's just something that I suppose we share in common. And maybe if for no other reason, it serves to let listeners know that, there was this group of people that you really didn't know existed. I mean, you weren't shocked that anyone was doing what they were doing, I'm sure. Or maybe you were. I mean, maybe I was too. Like, wow, people actually make a living doing that or try to make a living.
Well, I remember what was new for me is not so much that what they were doing for a living, because I know, like massage therapists, I had never heard of Reiki. I was exposed to all of these new modalities, and that's a thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it was funny because I resonated with it, but it was so different in how they think and how they talk and their view on the world. So imagine if you're a high-tech software engineer or even like an attorney, right? Those people are linear, logical, just the facts thinkers. And, it used to be, not so much now, you dress in suits and ties and you are, boom, 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 process oriented, get it done. The people in the Reiki healing community, the healers, they don't think like that. It truly is on a different emotional plane where they feel. They're not so logical thinkers. They're the feelers. And I had never really been exposed to that. And one of the biggest things that also drove me into doing what I'm doing now is these two different groups of people talk differently and they listen differently. And so what cracked me up is a lot of the holistic community, they want high-tech people as clients because typically high-tech people make money, right? But what I work with them on is you have to talk to this group of people totally different than you talk amongst yourself because high-tech people, they don't talk that way. And if you don't talk the way they talk, they won't hear you. They'll just look at you like you're a Fruit Loop, right?
That's true. Yeah.
Right. A moonbeams truck, tree hugger, it's just like, wow. The two sides, it's like oil and water. And the people that truly get how to talk and listen in both groups can really be a success. And so that's where I really felt that I could bridge the gap in the middle because I kind of have a high-tech background, but I kind of resonate with these people and I find they're fascinating. And so for me, I'm educating both sides on how to talk to each other. And for me, it was fascinating.
Yeah. May we all experience such revelations and connections. That's really great. I'm glad I asked. I wasn't sure where that would go, but it was interesting to me.
Yeah. And again, it's like I never knew these people existed, but they're fascinating. They're lovely people. But I work with them on if you want a high-tech corporate executive as a client, you have to learn how to talk to them in a language that they will understand, and vice versa for the high-tech people. Because a lot of high-tech people are totally stressed, right? Stressed lives, busy, trying to do it all, but yet they're screaming in their stressed outedness, if you will, but they don't know what they're screaming for. Well, they're screaming for somebody like a Reiki healer, but they don't know it because they write them off as, oh, those people. But no, that's the type of person that they actually are in need of, but they don't know it, right? So that's where I find it's a really fascinating place to be.
Yeah. And I don't know if you recall, and maybe you do quite readily, but when you and I met, had you had this experience where you went to the conference, you went to the second one, and then you had made this kind of connection and you resonated with these people? Do you?
Yes. Yeah.
Which was it?
When we met, it was after that. It was after I'd gone to those conferences.
Okay. Well, I was going to comment that I knew that you had backgrounds with these large, well-known companies, but when you and I spoke, I mean, I could see, I had come from a world of huge companies and then a world of sort of mid-size, which are still large companies, and then to a world of small, scrappy startups to being self-employed when you and I met. And actually, Partner for Leads was making an attempt at being a small I almost said scrappy startup. I didn't mean that. A scrappy.
Get the ass out of crappy? No.
Yeah, scrappy startup. But I had been self-employed for quite a while, and you seemed very much like me. So you had clearly gone through a big change. I want to mention some other things about you, and I don't know if it'll take us in a different conversation direction. Because originally I wanted to connect this with, your career, which it still is, and, why you got into all this public speaking stuff. But I think I wanted to go ahead and mention it because there may be people listening who are at a moment in life where they either decided they were going to do something on their own and their confidence is a little shaken because now what do? They've never not been an employee, or they're an employee and something doesn't feel right. But anyway, you have a background. You mentioned your executive MBA, courtesy of HP. Thanks, HP. I feel like they maybe helped bring you to me. But you had, and all the certifications that they helped you with, but among your other disciplines of expertise are business planning, sales operations, product marketing, and new product introduction. And so here you are today doing public speaking consulting with not only holistic healer professionals. I don't like that way of, what do I usually say? I've sort of lost, I'm at a loss for what I usually call them. I got it. Health and wellness professionals.
There you go.
But also with corporate executives and probably high caliber salespeople. So I just wanted to put that out there for people who are listening that might be a little like Doris back in your HP days. But maybe before I jump to another question and just blab all that, is there, in hearing me say all those things about you, is there anything at all that sort of jumps in your head about how you ended up here today? Not here today talking to me, but
With my coaching business?
Mm-hmm.
Not really. I think that was the genesis of it, but it has morphed over time, which again is an interesting path how I got from when I first started, which is 6.5 years ago, because what I'm doing now is kind of the same, but really different than what I thought I would be doing, which again is kind of cool. But for me, though, I didn't map, because I had never thought I would own my own business. I didn't really know what to do. So I just did everything that I thought I needed to do. And that's where I met you. I just started joining a bunch of networking groups.
Mm-hmm.
I, at one point, was in 3 different chambers, because that's what you do, right? You join chambers, you network. And, after I think it was a year of 2 or 3 or 4 events a day and countless meetings and coffee dates, and you're going, holy cow, is this really working? But I'm also an Excel spreadsheet queen, so I kept track of what made sense and what was working and what wasn't working. And then I got to realizing that this shotgun approach isn't probably the most effective. So then I started thinking about, well, what is really effective for me? And that's where I've honed it down. But also in my first approach, I was going to help people who were afraid of public speaking.
Mm-hmm.
And I noticed 2 things. When I would say public speaking, people would think, oh, I'm never going to give a speech in front of 500 people, so I don't need you. So then I thought, oh, well, that's not working out well. But then I'd also come across people who love giving presentations. And they are gifted. They are not afraid. They do give a lot of presentations. And a lot of them would give presentations in front of 5 or 6 or 1,000 people. And I remember getting so depressed, going, these people are never going to hire me. I'm never going to get any clients because nobody needs me. But then these people that were confident, 10 minutes later, they were still telling me how great and awesome they are. And then I started thinking, God, they're really annoying. And that's when another light bulb went off, right? These people need me more than the shy people because they don't know when to stop talking. So they have no filter going out, and they certainly don't have any filter coming back, judging the social cues of their audience. And so I changed my messaging from I'll turn your fear into fun, because these people weren't afraid. So they're never going to self-identify that they would need me. So I turned it into I work with people to become more effective in their communications. And that's when I started getting those people. Because who doesn't want to be more effective?
Who doesn't want to invest in themselves? Well, a lot of people actually,
Exactly. Yeah, a lot of people. Yeah, that's another story.
That's a great revelation too. May I venture to say that Silicon Valley is an epicenter for people who don't necessarily have the proper filters or social cues?
Oh, exactly. Because a lot of people are, I don't want to say it in a demeaning way, but like they're on one path and one path only. And a lot of people are not receptive to learning about, well, there might be a different path to get you to the same place, right? And it's a really interesting because there's so many foreign-born professionals. Probably 60 to 70% of my client base are foreign-born, which has been a really neat for me, just learning about all these different cultures. So every client is just an awesome source of inspiration and learning for me personally. But everybody is different. But a lot of corporations force you into being the same. It's just like the school system. We educate people's creativity out. And a lot of the corporate work stamps out people's creativity, which they would be all more profitable if they would foster creativity. But, a lot of it really is limited out.
I'm so happy you used that word because in rebranding this podcast, I have decided, at least initially, we'll see where it goes, but to push it in the direction, or with the slant, I should say, in the directional slant of creativity and the creative aspects of business owners, entrepreneurial spirit, and so forth. What does creativity in the life of your clients and in your own life mean professionally?
Well, I'll give you a brilliant example of somebody or a couple of people actually that were really stuck. Because a lot of these people are brilliant, right? They're executive directors, they're vice presidents, or they're managers, or they're business owners, right? I don't want to paint that I only work with Silicon Valley executives because I work with a lot of real estate agents and a lot of attorneys and people in the CPA profession. So basically all walks of life. But a lot of them have either been told by their management that we would like to promote you, but you can't get there until or unless you work on your executive presence, which then I went, ding, 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 I'm going to create a course on executive presence because it's out there. It's a thing.
Segue into your forthcoming course.
But I had been noodling, but, I had 3 people come to me in 1 week and their management had told them you need to work on your executive presence. So I thought, well, isn't that interesting? But a lot of it, they're smart, they're intelligent, they're stuck in, I need to be a better employee, I need to get this promotion. But because they're so brilliant and they're so stuck on that path, they can't see how to get better. I want to be like my CEO because he just has a commanding presence, but they'll never be the CEO. For example, let's just say these people are in their 30s and they're Chinese or Indian, and the CEO is a 65-year-old white guy, right? They're never going to be like that because they aren't like that. And so to help them get beyond being stuck, what I'll do sometimes is I'll say, so tell me about what did you do for fun when you were 5 and 6 years old? And they'll look at me like, what? It's just like, just play with me. So, tell me about your background. What did you like doing when you were a real little kid? Like, what was your favorite thing to do? I remember this one woman, it's just like, I loved drawing. And I said, so you were artistic. She goes, I loved it. Their whole being shifts and they become a different person when they go back to their childhood and what they truly loved to do. And then, I'll let them talk and then I'll say, did you feel how your body shifted and your energy changed when you talked about what you loved to do as a kid? And they never think about it. She's like, I felt it. And I'm going, so that's what I want you to feel as your 36-year-old self now being stressed out in this corporate job. I want you to go back and remember how you felt when you were 6. And then with that energy, then it automatically shifts. And then they're able to think differently because they're getting in touch with their creative self before it was stamped out going through the educational system.
Why do you think that you tend to look at things from a creativity perspective where I believe often people do not? And it's just a question of pure curiosity on my point.
Right. I never set out to do it that way. I just started noticing a lot of people are just shut down, and not shut down in that they're not a successful person. Because again, these people are brilliantly successful, but the cost of being brilliantly successful is often we shut down who we really are. And so what I started believing, and one of my main missions is who we are is so much more important than what we do. And once people can tap into who they are, that's the source of their confidence. And why people, I believe, suffer from a lack of self-confidence when they are these brilliant, important people in their profession is because they are constantly comparing themselves to someone who is ahead of them. Like if you're a manager, you're comparing yourself to a director. And if you're a director, you're comparing yourself to a vice president. And they could have 20 years more experience. But it's like this incessant comparison of, I've got to be like them in order to be a success. So their definition of success is always someone bigger, better than me, which then subjugates, I am always less than, which is a very harsh place to be. But when you can embrace the fact that you are a pretty freaking awesome person in your own right, then you realize that comparison limits who you really are. And if you stop limiting yourself, you will show up in a different way which is who you really are. Which goes back into the creativity of not being shackled by, I need to be better. Because, boy, getting on that treadmill is a no-win situation because you will never get there.
Yeah, there's a very popular bit of advice in the marketing and personal brand space, and that is to stop comparing yourself to others. That's a recipe for not good things.
Right, because we always compare our insides, like how do we feel, with other people's outsides. How do they look? They look so successful. They sound so articulate. They, drove up in their Maserati or whatever, Rolls Royce. We have a neighbor that has a Rolls Royce. It cracks me up. And again, it's like, seriously? But again, it's like we compare our insides to their outsides. We will never win.
When you talk about these things, and when I talk to you in general, you strike me as someone who is well acquainted with the world of NLP. And I bring it up because I have been mentioning as of late a book that I finally took the time to read. And the reading was long overdue in a couple of ways. One, I knew it was something I should learn more about, but then probably many months before I purchased the book, a friend who's been in the counseling and social services world as an entrepreneur for a long time. We were just talking about the long form interview, which you and I are doing today, and how much I enjoy it and how much I enjoy the process of asking questions and asking better questions. And one of the things he recommended to me, and has been most helpful to him because he too asks a lot of questions in his career, was this book called NLP, The Essential Guide to Neuro-Linguistic Programming. There you go, listeners. I'll put a link in the show notes if you want to see that book. But
okay.
But I assume, is that true, that yes, you are very acquainted with that world?
I'm going to say I am kind of sort of very well acquainted with that world. And the reason why I say that is I've never studied it. I never took classes in it. And I know there are certifications and programs and, a lot of interesting communities that are based on that. And the reason why I say I'm familiar with it is a lot of the communities and the organizations I started seeking out are all disciples of that discipline. And one of the fascinating things, it's like, Tony Robbins, right? It seems like everybody your organizational chart starts with Tony Robbins and goes out. Everybody is somehow associated with that. But I saw some truly, I don't want to use evil in like too harsh of a thing, but some unsavory uses of NLP. And so while I know it's very powerful and when it's used properly, it's really great, I've seen a lot of people use it in what I consider to be a not very great manner, where they are manipulating and taking advantage of people. And I just cannot abide by that. So for me, I know it's powerful, but I just see it used and abused in a way that I just don't subscribe to.
Yeah, and I think that just comes with the power of influence that is a great power, and however the saying goes, with all great power comes great responsibility, right?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I find it fascinating. It's like, oh wow, that's really interesting how they're using that, and it works. Which is, again, the scary thing is it works. But it's just like, oh, these poor people, they don't know they're being manipulated. So that's why, I have a big 800-pound of rock pellet salt to go with it.
Yeah, I understand. And, there are well, this is the last thing I'll mention on it, but in my experience to date now that I started reading this book is more through this book than through life. I had discovered some really interesting things in talking to people about it and learned, a few things without, like you, I had never done any classes or anything like that. But one of the really fascinating things about it for people who care are dealing with things that are very personal, like things that you're hung up on, things that you're dwelling on, conflict resolution. And I didn't know, I could have guessed conflict resolution was in there, but I would have never guessed that it also, in this particular book anyway, also talks a lot about how to get out of the bad place that we get into when we dwell on something that's eating us up inside, which is very cool. Which is very cool.
Oh, exactly. Yeah.
I want to mention a couple things as we get close to the end of our time together today that I really wanted to get to. And one is a couple things from emails that I have received from you. I'm on your list. I recommend you get on Doris's list. Yeah, which you can get to, by the way, by going to SiliconValleySpeaks.com, right?
Correct.
Okay. SiliconValleySpeaks.com. I'll put that in the show notes too. But so I got one from you recently that said, "What do you do when you feel stuck?" Do you remember that email?
Oh, yes.
Can you talk about what you were stuck on and what you were expressing in that?
Yes, because, and again, I feel like I'm a totally normal human being, and I never, my clients keep me humble, and, as well as I keep stumbling and keep myself humble too, right? But I am going through a process on launching one of my courses online. And I am old enough to feel like sometimes I'm a Luddite and I am not really up on the technology like if you're in your 20s and 30s. These people get it. And for me, sometimes things that shouldn't be a struggle are a struggle. And again, it's a lot of self-learning about myself where I can talk in front of a big crowd. I'm very confident. I love helping other people get through their fears about it. But one of the things I was realizing is that I have the same fear about going through and, for whatever reason, launching this online as a lot of people have, stepping in front of a crowd and giving a presentation. And for me, it's just really interesting to realize that wow, as good as I am and as fearless as I am in giving talks in front of a lot of people, for some reason, pushing the button on an email campaign to launch a course was so fearful for me and filled me with such anxiety for weeks. I mean, I couldn't sleep. I was just like, I could not, it was just amazing. And so I think that's why I am a good coach, is because I know what my clients are going through. We're all afraid of something, right? I used to be afraid of roller coasters. And people would laugh and going, yeah, but I can speak in front of 1,000 people, no sweat. But I could not get on a roller coaster. It's just like, we're all afraid of something, which again makes us all human. It's just we're all afraid of something different. So how do you handle that?
And I suppose segueing again to perhaps underscore a point that this email kind of led me to another one, or conversation anyway, that you are very close to finalizing a long-awaited Executive Presence Communication with Confidence program. Hopefully that's still the title.
Yeah.
And so I know people are going to be able to learn about that by going to your website, and probably even better to sign up for your email list, which they can do there as well. And while I'm at it, Doris is going to send me a PDF on, actually, I didn't note that part. What I think I remember is it is a number of tips on speaking and presentation.
Yes. The number one skill that you need to be an effective presenter and really let your leadership shine. Yeah.
Cool. She's going to send that to me, and there'll be a link in the show notes for you to grab that for totally free, no email address required. If you want to drop your email address for me on my website to join my community, that's okay too, but you don't have to. And I know that you're going to have it on your website soon, so you'll be able to get it there from Doris directly in the super near future. Actually, by the time you hear this episode, I bet you'll be able to get both the course.
Right.
Is there anything that you want to add about the course before we wrap up?
It's going to be live. So sometimes, and I'm realizing again, that lingo is everything, is what I teach, right? Online, but it's still a live course. So it's not a passive course where you click the button and consume the content whenever you want. They are small cohorts. They're probably going to be 6 people in each cohort. So it'll be like, let's just say you're in the course. We'll be using Zoom so everybody can see everybody. And it's a combination of leadership, skills, training, content, but a good half of it is going to be you have an opportunity every time we meet, which is a total of 6 times for each cohort. You will be giving presentations of various kinds. And then I can give you feedback on whatever you need to have feedback on. But there's going to be impromptu. You will get to prepare and deliver several speeches throughout the courses. The last time we meet, people will be giving a 10-minute TED Talk type talk, and I call it your legacy talks. So it's about creating and delivering compelling and concise presentations, as well as learning the art of impromptu and different leadership concepts like resilience, influence, risk, etc.
An amazing art and set of amazing skills to learn. Well, given that this episode's going to publish around the 29th of November, which is, I guess, around our Thanksgiving, yours and mine, is there anything that I need to say while we're recording here that's going to make any difference, since it's a live program? And the reason I ask is it going to be something that you repeat as a live program, or will there be something that someone can go to later and say, oh, I'd still like to attend, but I want to do some recorded version?
Oh, definitely. Yep. I'm going to be offering these all throughout the year because there's 6-week courses. So I'm just going to keep repeating them throughout the year.
That is so cool. That's so cool.
And others. I'm creating others too. I'm just trying to get this one off the ground so I can stop stressing over it.
That's very exciting. And I can totally relate. And I know that people listening to this will relate too, because I was going to say imposter syndrome.
Exactly. I'm going to do a course on that too.
That's great. Yeah, because we all do that.
That's one of my courses. Yep. And again, we are all afraid of something, but we are all expert at something. And that's where we can all build each other up as that's why communities are so awesome, is because we're not all expert in everything and we're not all afraid of the same thing. So if there's 100 of us, then we all help each other through everything.
I love that. That's a great place to wrap up. Doris, thank you again for spending time with me today.
Well, this was so awesome, Robert. I can't wait to come down and meet you in Panama.
Hey, yeah, it's an open invitation. You can come visit with me and Sammy anytime. And oh, by the way,
you can be my tour guide.
That sounds great. I'm there. And I am definitely going to let you know the next time we're in the Bay Area.
Oh, definitely do. I have stuff planned for you when you show up.
Awesome. All right. We'll talk to you soon.
All right. Bye.
Thanks again for listening. If you like what you heard today, subscribe on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your favorite podcasts. Until next time.